Nobody expected it. Not really. Sure, a few scientists saw strange readings, radio bursts from deep space, satellite flickers, but the governments brushed it off. As always, humans don't panic until the fire's already licking their skin. And by the time we realized this wasn't just noise from a distant galaxy, the sky had already begun to burn. They didn't come to talk. They came to conquer. I was under a busted truck when it started. I worked in a military motor pool at Fort Carson, Colorado. Just a grease monkey fixing up old transport units for the U.S. Army. Thought I had a quiet life. I was wrong. It was a Thursday, clear skies. My buddy Vince was halfway through a dumb story about his ex when the first shadows passed over us. Giant ones. They stretched across the ground like death itself was blocking out the sun. We looked up and everything changed. The sky was full. Ships, thousands of them. Heavy, angular monsters floating like they owned the damn air. No ceremony, no announcement, just arrival. Turns out there were 9,900 of them. 9,900 warships armed to the teeth, bigger than any human building, with weapons that could wipe cities off the map without even touching them. They weren't here for a friendly handshake. The first blast hit Paris. A second later, Tokyo disappeared. By the time they reached Sao Paulo, everyone knew this wasn't a movie. They thought we'd fold. They thought we were just apes with guns. But they didn't understand one thing. We've been training for war since the day we learned how to stand upright. And now, for the first time in our blood-soaked history, we had one target, one invader, one cause. You'd be amazed how fast humans can change when survival is the only option. The first 2 days were hell. No coordination, no plan. Entire nations collapsed before noon. Nuclear plants were melted. Oceans boiled. I saw satellite footage of London going dark, just gone. Then something strange happened. We fought back. Not just armies, everybody. Farmers in Kansas were building shoulder launchers out of tractor parts. Prisoners were released to fight. Gangs and militias joined hands with old enemies. Tech nerds reprogrammed traffic systems to cause pileups that trapped enemy ground crawlers. I saw a grandmother in Detroit stab an Aurelian scout with a kitchen knife and steal its communicator. You know what happens when you corner a species that spent most of its existence killing itself over land and religion. It turns on you, together. I wasn't a soldier. Not at first. But I picked up a gun on day 3. I watched my CO vaporized in front of me and took his rifle before his body even hit the dirt. We built trenches outside of Denver using school buses and concrete debris. I learned how to shoot from a blind vet who'd served in NM. He could smell the alien bastards before we saw them. The aliens called themselves the Aurelians, arrogant bugs with shiny armor and zero respect for life. Claimed they'd liberated over 40 species from primal chaos. Earth was just their next project. Except this project bit back. Day 6. We shot down our first mothership, took 50 drones and the lives of 200 fighters. But we brought that monster to the ground. People danced on its corpse, took selfies with it. Day 10. We hijacked their tech, turned one of their own ships against them. They never expected that. Week 2. Half their fleet was gone. The other half was in retreat, but we weren't giving them space. Not anymore. We poisoned lakes just so they couldn't harvest water. Wired entire suburbs with traps. Strapped bombs to rats and let them loose in enemy camps. We didn't fight clean. We didn't fight honorable. We fought like humans. Dirty, angry, and relentless. Out of 9,900 ships, only 17 made it out. They limped into orbit, engines smoking, full of holes, and they ran. But here's the thing. We weren't finished. They thought we'd be grateful they left. That we'd count our dead, bury our pride, and move on. But that's not how this works. You don't drop a match in someone's home, walk out halfway through the fire, and expect them to smile. We weren't going to let it end like that. I joined what they started calling the burn teams. Technically, it was a multinational task force of ground assault soldiers and rogue engineers, but we didn't wait around for orders. We hunted down every crash site, every Aurelian outpost left behind, every signal we could trace. We burned them. That's why we got the name. It wasn't about revenge. Not for most of us. It was about making sure they never came back. Ever. Earth might have been a backwater to them. But to us, it was the only home we had left, and it was personal now. I'd seen kids with radiation burns, cities smoldering with the smell of melted steel and bodies. My mom's neighborhood was reduced to a hole in the earth, and the only thing we found in the rubble was her wedding ring. So no, we didn't forgive. We didn't forget. We followed. The 17 ships had gone dark after leaving orbit. Some theorized they were headed back to the main Aurelian command, somewhere in the Trian expanse, light years away. But we had something they didn't expect, one of their own communication cores, pulled from a downed cruiser outside Moscow, and a hacker named Juno who used to run cyber heist out of Tokyo before the world fell apart. She cracked their language in a week. By the end of that month, we knew where they were headed. Now here's where it gets wild. We didn't have ships, not ones that could cross light years. NASA was gone. SpaceX was rubble. But we had pieces. Alien tech, reverse-engineered circuits, fusion cores from their wreckage. And we had people smart enough and desperate enough to stitch them together. In the ruins of a Texas military base, we built our first starfighter. Ugly as hell, held together with welded rebar and duct tape in some places. But it flew, and it could carry a bomb the size of a van. The Aurelian survivors hadn't even reached their main fleet. Yet when we sent that first ship out, one of our best, Sergeant Collier, piloted it. Ex-Marine, lost his whole family in Chicago. He took a deep breath, lit a cigar, and flew straight into their convoy. 3 of their warships clustered around a fuel depot floating in the dead dark between galaxies. We lost signal after he breached their shields. 10 minutes later, the feed lit up with a flash so bright it blinded one of our comp techs. 3 warships gone. That was the moment Earth officially took the war to them. We called it the retaliation campaign. Our scavenger fleet started growing. We found old orbital platforms, even dragged up deep-sea subs and retrofitted them for low-grav vacuum. Soldiers became pilots. Civilians became command crews. And I, just a grease monkey turned fighter, got assigned to the Havoc Spear, or retrofitted alien corvette armed with Earth-made explosives and 6 unshaven maniacs who smelled like burnt coffee and blood. We were going after their command beacon, a relay station deep in their territory feeding data across their empire. If we could blow it up, they'd go blind, cut off, disorganized. The briefing was simple. Get in, plant the core, and get out. Or don't get out. Just make sure it explodes. We launched in silence. No medals, no press, just the sound of engines coughing to life and the quiet voice of my squad leader, Reyes, saying, "Let's make them remember Earth wasn't a mistake." I still didn't know what kind of soldier I was. I wasn't trained for deep space combat. I wasn't made for zero-G infiltration. But I knew how to fight, and that was more than enough. We came out of slip space like a knife through meat, fast, sharp, and with absolutely no grace. The Havoc Spear shuddered, metal groaning under the stress of re-entry into real space. We weren't built for elegance. We were built for one thing: destruction. And right now, we were staring down a structure the size of Manhattan floating in the middle of a crimson nebula. That was the Aurelian command beacon, our target. It was uglier than I'd imagined. Nothing sleek or alien beautiful, just a tangled mess of towers, dishes, and black spines rotating in slow, deliberate patterns. Thousands of little lights blinked across its hull, each one a crew member, each one someone we were about to make very dead. "Looks like a goddamn space termite nest," said Reyes, adjusting the straps on his chest rig. "Smells like one too," grunted Mace, our demolitions guy, always chewing gum even in vacuum gear. No idea where he found it anymore. Juno's voice crackled over the comms. "Beacon is emitting on 8 channels. They've got a pulse net spread across half a system. We take it out, they lose tracking, navigation, and long-range comms. It's like stabbing a brain in the dark." "Then let's make it bleed," Reyes said, slamming his visor down. We hit the thrusters and dropped fast. The Aurelian patrol drones didn't see us coming. They were used to smooth stealth ships, not a patchwork death sled duct taped together by angry humans. We looked like junk, but junk with teeth. Reyes fired the rail gun. The first drone exploded in a flash of orange fire. The second one caught a direct hit from Mace's shoulder launcher and spun out like a dying insect. 2 more blinked to life from the beacon's flanks, swarming toward us. "Cutting gravity," Juno yelled over the ship-wide channel. I slammed into the ceiling, then floated as the ship lurched sideways. I grabbed the grip rail, heart pounding, watching Reyes manually steer the Havoc spear between 2 antenna towers. We didn't wait to land. At 40 meters above the platform, the bottom hatch dropped open, and Reyes gave the signal. 1 blink from his helmet's LED. "Go." I jumped. It's hard to describe what it feels like leaping from a ship in the vacuum of space with nothing but a magnetic grappling hook and faith. The stars spun. The beacon's surface rushed toward me, and for a second, I swore I saw my reflection in the curve of one of their sensor domes. Then clang, the hook caught on a maintenance rail, and I slammed into the platform hard enough to knock the breath from my lungs. Mace landed next to me, swearing through his helmet. "Next time we ask for a parachute." "You want to talk to command?" I asked, pulling my rifle from its magnetic sling. "Nope." Reyes and Juno hit the deck seconds later. We moved as a unit, cutting across the surface of the beacon like rats in a kitchen. Everything was too clean, too sterile. Their tech was cold, silent. No wires, no hum, just the soft vibration of machinery under our boots and the occasional blinking light from an embedded interface. Juno pulled out her tablet, syncing to the stolen Aurelian signal decoder. "Cores beneath that tower," she pointed. "We blow it. The chain reaction will toast the whole array." Reyes nodded. "Set charges. Watch for guards." They came sooner than we thought. A pressure door hissed open, and 3 Aurelian soldiers stepped out, tall, spindly things with armor that shimmered like oil in the dark. No words, no hesitation. They raised their weapons in perfect sync. But we were faster. I dropped to one knee and squeezed off a shot. My bullet tore through the lead Aurelian's skull with a wet crack. Mace lobbed a short-range EMP grenade that knocked the others into a twitching spasm. Reyes didn't waste the moment. He walked up and emptied his sidearm into their twitching bodies. We weren't here to capture. We weren't here to study. We were here to send a message. Juno reached the core door and started slicing it open. 3 minutes to bypass, she muttered. "That's 3 minutes too long," I said, aiming down the corridor. "Move fast. They know we're here now." We heard the alarms before the lights turned red. They were coming, and we were out of time. The alarms screamed like dying animals. A red glow spilled across the walls of the Aurelian core chamber, pulsing in sync with the tremble beneath our boots. We knew what that meant. Lockdown. Reinforcements. Probably a full squad of those armored freaks. Maybe more, but we were already in. Juno's hands were a blur over the cracked tablet screen, connecting wires, plugging adapters into alien sockets, overriding security in a language she barely understood. Her mouth moved constantly, muttering code strings and curses in Japanese and English. Sweat pooled on her brow inside the helmet. Behind her, Mace unpacked the explosives. 2 bricks of compact fusion charges wrapped tight in a pressure-sealed detonator pack. Homemade, Barely tested, highly unstable. Perfect. Timer or remote? Rise asked. Remote, Mace said. Timer's too risky if we get pinned. I kept my rifle trained on the corridor behind us, listening for footsteps. If you could even call the way Aurelians moved stepping. It was more like the clicking scurry of something half insect, half snake. And when they ran, it was fast. Too fast. Juno let out a breath. I'm in. Core is exposed. We've got 5 minutes before it locks me out again. Do it, Reyes said. Mace, plant the charge. I glanced toward the corridor. The red light strobed. For a second, all I could hear was the faint hum of alien machinery, like the ship was breathing. Then the sound hit us. A scream, not human. It echoed through the metal like it came from inside our own bones. A howl of rage and warning. The kind of sound that made you instinctively want to run. I didn't. I crouched down, finger on the trigger. The first wave hit fast. 3 Aurelians rounded the corner. I squeezed off 2 shots, dropping the lead one instantly. Mace whipped around, yelling, and unloaded his sidearm into the second. Reyes caught the third with a knife to the throat. Yes, a knife, close and brutal. But they weren't alone. A second group emerged from the ceiling vents, literally peeled back the metal like foil, and dropped down on us. One landed on Juno, knocking her off the console. I spun and fired, catching it in the side just as it raised a blade-like appendage to strike her. The creature screeched and collapsed, twitching. Juno scrambled back to her feet. We don't have time for this. Mace slapped the explosive charge onto the core, pressing the primer. Ready to blow. Then fall back. Reyes shouted. Back to the launch point. We moved fast, covering each other as we pushed through the corridor. More Aurelians poured in from every angle. Walls, ceilings, hidden hatches, like they were part of the ship itself. They didn't hesitate, didn't scream in pain, just attacked over and over.